Hello, hello. My name is Sin of the War, and I don't fucking know. I'm with an opinion. Um, I saw this Timcast video, and I figured I'd give a response. I have a few things I want to say about what he says. I don't completely agree with what he's saying in the beginning. I've only watched 2 minutes so far, and there are some certain ideals I kind of want to go against. So let's just jump into the video and see how this goes.
People turn to the likes of Jordan Peterson or Andrew Tate to try and figure out what it is to be a man. And I'm a half kidding, obviously. Many people aren't so much looking for what it means to be a man, they're looking for people who speak truth about masculinity. And Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are two sides of the same coin in that respect. That being said, Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate both have their share of controversial statements. But I started thinking when I saw this tweet posted by Carl Benjamin. It's actually a tweet posted by Babe Brahman, which was reposted by Carl Benjamin. I started thinking about what it means to be a man, what it means to actually be a man. What are your priorities? What is fear and what is bravery? I give you, my friends, the story of Andre the
Actually, Tim, I kind of have to disagree with you here. The reason being is because a lot of people are in fact looking for what it means to be a man because men have been removed from their lives. As a person who grew up with a dad that I could maybe see for an hour a day, and during that hour, my stepmom decided that she wanted to lie about what I was doing and how I was behaving in order to get him to punish me because that was my stepmom and she didn't think I belonged in the house and that was her way of acting it out. Um, and eventually, they ejected me from the house. So I didn't really get to hang out a lot with my father. I didn't really get to truly know what it was to be a man for a very long time because he was expected to be the breadwinner. He was expected to pay for all the bills of the house, and she didn't work. She tried to do her hair salon thing, and eventually she ejected me out in favoritism of her daughter. And then my dad was so beaten down that he was he just didn't have the moral backbone to say no. Um, and he just wanted me out of that situation. So I effectively grew up with almost no dad. And there are some people out there who did grow up with no dad. Now, normally you would find a substitute dad. Typically, this would happen in school, where you find that one male teacher that you're able to talk to throughout the years that you're at the school. You could go to him for advice or seek him out. But not only is school a mostly female-dominated zone, but they made it risky for men to have interactions with children. Period. Like they women could be touchy feely all over the place, but men could not even suggest or hint that there was any emotion in his actions whatsoever, or he'd risk his job, he'd risk his livelihood. And so a lot of men who had already been a teacher for years were kind of stuck there. So they kind of reached out, but they kind of didn't. I was lucky enough during my final years of high school that I found a couple of male teachers that were really, really strict with me and really taught me like the values of perfectionism, of valuing what's in your craft. And I had I had one female teacher who didn't teach me the value of perfectionism, but definitely taught me why it's always important to be creative and resourceful. One in 4 years, but I had three male teachers that defined my definition, and so really men are looking for the definition of being a man because they're told the old ways of being a man are wrong or that it's toxic masculinity. So men learn by visual examples. They learn by seeing. But the problem is that the seeing portion of it has become defined as toxic masculinity. You see it on television, and then immediately after, you have some feminist or other person coming in and saying, that's toxic masculinity. And so the men go, okay, that's what I don't do. And then they do this over and over and over and over. And it's a self-fulfilling cycle of them never becoming a real man, losing their purpose. And then they discover upon somebody like Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson who tell them, no, that's not correct. That's not necessarily toxic masculinity. That's not necessarily the truth. And here's why. They give a really good reason as to why. The and I really don't like the fact that you box it up like that.
rooster. Ah, yes. I don't know if friends the story is what is fear and what is bravery. I give you my friend Benjamin. I started thinking about what it means to be a man, which was reposted by Carl Benjamin, posted by Commercial Statement, masculinity. And Andrew looking for people who speak truth about masculinity. And Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson are two sides of the same coin in that respect. That being said, Jordan Peterson and Andrew Tate both have their share of controversial statements. But I started thinking, when I saw this tweet posted by Carl Benjamin, it's actually a tweet posted by Babe Brahman, which was reposted by Carl Benjamin, I started thinking about what it means to be a man, what it means to actually be a man. What are your priorities? What is fear and what is bravery? I give you, my friends, the story of Andre the Rooster. Ah, yes. I don't know if this is the first completely dedicated segment to chickens, but this story is actually about the worth of men, what it means to be a man. Are you a man? And what does that mean? Well, there's a men and there are boys. And they have that saying about this one really separates men from the boys here, right? But what does that mean? I look to the modern world today, and I see so much Sodom and Gomorrah. And take it for what it is. Maybe you like the idea of the U.S. being Sodom and Gomorrah. Weak men partying, women partying, drugs, abuse, vanity, lust, you name it. All the 7 deadly sins. And we look for stories of inspiration. The story of Hachiko the dog. You know the story of Hachiko? Hachiko was an Akita who went with his owner, a Japanese professor, every day to the train station to see him off. And then every day he would meet back at the train station to wait for his owner to get off the train, and they'd walk home together. One day, the professor had a stroke while teaching at university, and Hachiko the dog stood by that train waiting, but he never came back. So what happened? For 10 years, until his death, Hachiko waited at the train station for 10 years, and everyone knew him. They saw him, this stray who was always there, who refused to give up on his friend. It was such an amazing thing to the people in Japan that they built a statue in his honor. Now, the story's a bit more complicated than that. They tried to rehome Hachiko. He'd always run away and come back to the train station. But he represents loyalty, pure loyalty. And that's something about being a good person. But understand what it is to be a man. I now give you the story of Andre the Rooster. Brahmin Babe says,
Before we get to that, I think my most defining moment as a man was probably when I was taking my son to the bus stop. And I have taken my son to the bus stop for years. I don't understand parents. Like, I do and I don't. Like, I don't understand how parents are comfortable just sending their kids after like the age of 5 to the bus stop on their own. I felt so bad for some of the kids that I saw throughout the years just standing alone at a bus stop and basically in the middle of nowhere. Like, there would be nothing to stop some creepo running in and just snatching the child and running away with the child. Like, there's almost nothing that would stop them, and that's always really bothered me. But at the same time, society doesn't let you protect your freaking child that easily uh, until they're able to protect themselves. They require you to work ridiculous hours in order to pay for the roof over the child's head, and then get upset at you that you let the child be in this condition. Um, but I've had the fortune of being able to protect my child for a very long time. Uh, but when we went to the bus stop, he was probably 4 or 5, and he would there's a house across this 4-way, and they had we didn't really have any problem for like the first year. It was during the second year they had a pit bull that they didn't um properly keep in the house, as in animal control had been called on them a couple of times already, and the pit bull was still getting out of the house because the owner just didn't care. And the at this time the pit bull had gotten out of the house, and the bus driver had dropped off my son, and we were waiting. He was coming towards the car, and the bus was leaving down the road, and the pit bull had made its way across the road to across from us. And it was at that time that I handed my phone to my son, told him that if anything starts happening to call 911, lock the car, hide in the deepest part of the car that you could, and do not roll the windows down for anything, regardless of what you hear. And I popped the trunk, and I grabbed the tire iron, and I I made the big motions that you're supposed to make towards predatory animals to make them scared of you, and I got them to back off a couple of inches. But I was slowly edging my way to the front of the car. I had to go around the back end of the car, and he was a good 3 feet from me, and I'm pretty sure it was a flip of the coin on whether I would end up injured or not. Because as soon as I opened the door, the dog started coming after me, and I slammed the door. And luckily, I was able to get the door closed, and I was able to drive off. I called animal control. Animal control made the dog disappear for a couple of weeks, but ultimately, it didn't really do much. Um, but that was kind of my defining moment. That was when I made the flip, um, because I was ready to die. I was ready to die at that moment for my son, and just something about that incident just completely changed how I view life and how I treat everybody. And I feel like that was the defining moment of me going from being a reliable young man to a man. So they it's different for everybody, but I feel like the traditions of the past where we used to have to go through adult trials, I believe that was a tradition that we lost that we desperately need back.
Our fearless rooster Andre was killed in the line of duty this week. He fought off a raccoon long enough for us to intervene, but he didn't make it. Not a single chicken was lost. He was their protector, a hero. He will be sorely missed. My heart is heavy. Rip, sweet prince. And you know what? There's something amazing in that story, but the story's wrong. A chicken was lost that day, and that was Andre. He gave himself to make sure his family survived. You know, we've had chickens for quite some while. We have Chicken City, chickencity.com. We love our chickens. They're silly little doofy things. Rest in peace, Roberto Jr. He had a heart attack and died suddenly. I remember we had, when we only had, I think, 7.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm getting this really, like, I'm sorry, Tim. I know this is inappropriate, but I'm getting this funny image of a turkey just going "Quack," as it just yells out and then falls over dead. I think this is the first time it's occurred to me that chickens can have a heart attack. That is somewhat surprising to me, because, and it's not mainly because it's not like because I didn't know it. It's because it never connected. Because I knew humans could have heart attacks, and heart attacks happen the same way regardless of what animal you are. Because if you have blood pumping through your system, you have the risk of having a heart attack. But it's like, wait, an animal can have a heart attack, just like an animal can have the flu. Like what? It just it's weird. It's weird. It's something. There's a disconnect. Anyway, let's continue on.
7 chickens and accidentally a rooster. Yeah, we didn't intend to have a rooster, but turns out one of the baby chicks we bought supposed to be a girl and turned out to be a dude. That's Roberto. Because while hens may run in fear, certainly I think it's practical. They're not going to fight, but they'll fight if they have to. But they'll run. But all animals will. Humans will. Humans will shove people out of the way to get on the lifeboats in the Titanic. Roosters will run full speed towards the predator, knowing they will die to save their families.
Well, okay. And here's where I think I disagree with you slightly. Like, I will agree with you in that humans will run away, but not all humans. It requires a certain mindset. Like, if I know that if my son was in danger and his mother or his grandmother or grandmothers were with him, right? Even if he was an adult, even if he was 21 years old, like full grown adult, if my mother, his grandmother, or his mother was in his presence, they wouldn't let him do the fighting. They would be doing the fighting. I know some very feisty women in my life. Okay, they have some significant backbones. But here's the thing: that's because they were raised with that mentality. They were raised fighters. My mom was raised on a farm and went to a high school and picked a fight with pretty much anybody. Um, his other grandma was, and his mom, no, his other grandma was a farmer, I believe, who married a race car driver that was also a mechanic. Like, those are generations that you just didn't mess with. And then the woman I married, we're separated now because I drive her nuts. Um, and she kind of stabbed me with a sword. Um, she's a little psycho, but like, I don't know. I don't think that one's a little touchy. Maybe I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the future. But uh, worst comes to worst, she can fight. And so all of them have backbones. They're the female of the race, and like in Tim's example, the hens were running. Just because they're female doesn't mean they're going to run. It's how they were raised. I was raised to be extremely protective of my family. Um, I was, and that wasn't necessarily a raising from my father. It was more so a raising from my environment. Like, for instance, when me and my brother I used to be the person that would run away. I used to be that type of person. I have multiple instances where I would punch and run. I would sucker punch and run. That's not the most prideful part of my life, but it was. I used to be that person. But as I grew up, my mom would ask, in instances where both me and my brother were there, my mom would ask, If I was being a coward, why didn't my brother stick up for me? And then if my brother was being picked on because my brother was gay, if my brother was being picked on, why didn't I stick up for my brother? And so this constant encouragement of we stick up for each other because we're brothers, because we're family, kind of instilled into me that you stick up for family. And if you don't have that kind of raising, you're going to be the person that runs away. You're not. It requires a special type of mentality to be able to turn around and stick up to the bigger person. So I don't fully agree with you saying that it's just the rooster that would stick up, because I have a feeling that if the rooster wasn't there and they had no choice, one of the hens might adapt and become a lot more masculine than you think.
It's really amazing. So, what does it mean to be a man? Well, I thought about this. And I thought about in my life and in most people's lives, what does it mean to have no fear? Completely wrong. Completely wrong. Do you think the men who stormed the beaches of Normandy had no fear? I'm sure that they were praying. Forlorn hope, what do they call it? Knowing you're the first person out in the front line, your chance of survival is nothing. You're the center. You're the first line of defense. Man, imagine old battlefields during the Revolution. Imagine being one of the, in the Continental Army to defend the birth of a new nation. And they say, you will stand in front. And you did. You know your chance of survival is low, but there's a reason why you do it. And Andre got me thinking about what it means to truly fear. Andre was terrified. And I think most men who've encountered serious catastrophes or crises knows this. Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is facing down your fear, but acting anyway because you know you have to. So what does it mean to fear? Andre, I know it's a bit silly to use the story of a rooster, but, in his memory, Andre fears something greater than death. And I think most men who have families will understand this fear. And so I ask you, what do you fear more? Death or standing over the dead bodies of your children?
I think the easiest way to say this is that real men real men get along with the law. If it comes to their child's safety, the law is no longer concerned. The law is now non-existent to them. That's uh, that's what it boils down to.
And so when I look at a story about Andre the Rooster, I don't know what a rooster's thinking. I don't know that he actually thinks anything close to what I'm saying, but he represents something. Fictional comic book villain of a British officer who kills Mel Gibson's kid. And that basically drives the rage in his character to then go to war and engage in some very serious tactics, some guerrilla warfare. It's particularly brutal. And so when I see that,
I'm gonna tell you right now. I'm gonna tell you right now. The scariest thing in the world is a parent who has witnessed their child die at your hands. That is the scariest thing in the world, because unless there is some form of like intermediate justice, like we have our justice system, that it's very likely there are some Geneva conventions that are going to be broken, some Geneva laws and guidelines that are not going to be followed when that parent gets a hold of you.
that scene where the dude ends his life, I thought to myself, you can't do that, man. You can't. We need you. They took his kid from him and the pain was too great to bear. But this means he let them do it. He needed to stand and fight, not for his children, but for everyone else's as well. But that scene is what I thought of when I heard the story of Andre the Rooster. And we laugh because it's a silly little animal. But their lives to them, they matter. These roosters care about their families, and Andre knew he cared about his family enough to sacrifice himself. No longer are the days of men who are willing to run full speed, risking their lives to save their families. Too many people say things like, I don't want to put my family at risk, which is an understandable statement. But just understand, when you refuse to speak up, when you refuse to defend your community, you are condemning your children to live in the pod and eat the bugs. And maybe you say to yourself, that's better than being dead. Understood? Understood? But I look at the men in Uvalde, not the police, the people who ran in to save their kids. I look at our system of governance, and we are overwhelmed by people who don't have the conviction of a single rooster. Call him chicken. That's an insult to chickens. So I don't know. There's a lot more to it than that, but I'll leave it there.
Well, and I have one final thing to say, Tim, and that is, um, for me, for a very long time, I saw this stuff and I didn't speak out. You know, I had the capability of putting the camera to my face and risking my reputation and things like that. And I didn't speak out. Why? Because my kid was very young. He was 4, 5, 6. He would not have been able to survive on his own had I not been in the picture. His mother has asked me for money multiple times in order to bail herself out of debt because she does not manage things very well, and she's not that bright. I I'm the only person within this family that has a bachelor's degree, that has any modicum of like deep level intelligence when it comes to algorithms and education. And so I'm basically the knowledge box of this family. And for me to stick my head out and potentially get destroyed would mean that I risk the educational future of my child. It means I risk the best potential environment that I can think of for my son to uh, to be raised in. Now that time has passed, now that he is of a sufficient age where I believe that if he was left alone, he would. He's 13 and he mods his games, and I don't mean like Script Kiddie mods his games. He has been writing codes to add features to his games because it ticks them off. It ticks him off. I think he's at the stage where he no longer necessarily needs me to teach him how to do things educationally. Don't get me wrong, I'm useful for the every now and then, but I think the educational part on my behalf is freaking done, and it's time that I turn my attention to places that need me. And I think that having a voice on the internet, and I think a lot of other single fathers also need to start having their voice on the internet to let other people know, to let these crazy people, these insane people know that if you think your ideals are gonna go past 2 generations, you're nuts. You're nuts. If you're the person who believes in abortion, your ideas end in you. And so I think for a lot of men, it is they need to know that if they're gone, their children can be safe without them. And that's why a lot of them stay quiet. But anyway, my name is Sinith War. I make music. Check it out. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you, I don't know, sometime. Bye.